Hey everyone, it's Erin with Hail Varsity. I am joined by Greg, recruiting extraordinaire, also of Hail Varsity, and we are back for another recruiting question of the week. Greg, before we dive into this week's topic, how are you?
I'm well. It was a good weekend, relaxing, so I'm doing very well.
That's good. I will say, in the midst of all the relaxation, you did get a video with Steve Warren breaking down the recruitment, or the commitment, I should say, of Maverick Noonan. So if anyone is watching this and you want a little insight into that and what to expect with Maverick Noonan at Nebraska and beyond, you can go check out that video right now. It is live on our YouTube channel. It went live Sunday. So depending on when you're watching this, just go back a few videos. You can find it. And it's a really great breakdown. So you weren't all relaxing this weekend. You did have that video as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did work some. So yes, I did have that video as well. And a big thank you to Steve for doing that. It was really good information since Maverick trains with him out at Warren Academy. So it's always nice to kind of get some insight into these commitments that Nebraska has.
Yeah. And now we're going to be looking at potentially, well, let's just say this question comes from a number of you. I saw this question come up quite a bit on Twitter, specifically after the news broke, sort of what it means for the transfer portal, for recruiting in the 2023 class, everything in between. So let's just start here. Nouredin Nouili, who was projected as Nebraska's left guard this fall. I was pulling up his statement, so apologies for kind of being a little all over the place right now. But he was, there was a lot of uncertainty on the offensive line just because you have a new coach, everything else. But he was the projected starter at left guard. However, we now know that he unfortunately will not be eligible to play this fall. Here's his statement, which he released on Sunday. This spring, I was informed by the NCAA that due to a failed drug test, I am ineligible for the 2022 season. I would like to apologize to my family, teammates, coaches, and Husker fans for my error in judgment. It is an honor to be part of this football program and represent this university, and I do not take this responsibility lightly. Thank you to Coach Frost, our athletic and university administration, for allowing me to continue to be part of this program in 2022. I look forward to returning to the field to represent Nebraska in 2023. And he added a Go Big Red at the end. We also heard from Frost, who said Nebraska fully supports him. He's an outstanding young man. We did have a feature on him in Hail Varsity. And I do encourage people to, mistakes happen. So he seems, at least from what we have heard and know now, very remorseful for what happened. So all you can do is look forward, learn from your mistakes, look forward. I mean, he's going to be paying the price with not being able to play this fall, but that also does leave a number of questions for Nebraska. Before we dive into the recruiting side of things, head to hailvarsity.com if you want to hear more from Steve Marek. He has a story right now about what Nouredin Nouili's absence means for Nebraska's offensive line. So if you want to go dive into just what this means from that perspective, especially when you're looking at a player who was projected to start or at least be a big component of this offensive line in 2022, he does have more on that. But we are going to look at more of the impact of Nouredin's absence on recruiting, because a number of you brought it up. Like I said on Twitter, the question really was, what does this mean about potential late portal additions now? What about the high school recruiting class for 2023 or junior college recruiting? There was a lot of questions, a lot of people saying it's okay, Nebraska will just go get somebody else or, whatever. But then it prompted a whole slew of other questions. So Greg, let's just dive into this first and foremost. What does Nouredin's suspension have? What kind of impact does that have on recruiting right now?
It's so interesting because you're right in that I did see that as well. A lot of, they'll go and get someone else. And I think that is how that's all kind of unfolded rapidly in the college football landscape is really interesting to me. Just because you do have a situation where Nebraska could technically go and get someone else in fall camp, because you can still have those late additions via transfer. We've seen kind of the big swell of transfer activity that has happened around the country. Twice now, right in December/January and then leading up to spring football. And we saw that especially at Nebraska as well. And so they do have the ability to do that. There have to be players out there, right? Because the interesting thing about that is that, yes, Nebraska took 2 transfer offensive linemen that enrolled in January that took place in winter conditioning and then spring practice still on the team, Hunter Anthony and Kevin Williams Jr. but they did not add anyone else in that kind of second wave of transfer portal additions, right? Kind of that O'Shawn Mathis, Devin Drew time. There was no other offensive lineman that came in. And kind of the thought is that there just wasn't someone that Nebraska really felt strongly about, or some of those top guys ended up going elsewhere. So there could be an opportunity for that, but there then might not be. Then you have the situation where Nebraska has 3 high school offensive linemen already in the class, all from Nebraska, coincidentally, and we'll still add at least one more high school offensive lineman. I'm fairly confident in saying that to this recruiting class, but you don't want to get in the habit of counting on, 17, 18-year-olds coming in to play in the Big Ten. So that leaves junior college recruiting, which I do think could maybe see Nebraska really look at that a little bit more for this upcoming recruiting cycle, just to kind of cover their bases in case there is something with Nouili where he does not come back. I think that would be more of a fallback option instead of just an immediate help situation.
Yeah. And, right now, obviously, everything is very, new and fresh. And so a lot of answers will be yet to come. It does seem like you're saying, if for some reason he weren't to return, it sounds like, at least right now, where we're, the information that we have, that is his intention is to, work through this fall. He'll be able to practice, be a part of the team. He just will not be eligible to play. So then it would look at that return in 2023. It does make things interesting because, and I won't dive, like I said, too far into the specifics of this, because you can just go check out that article from Steve at hailvarsity.com. But, it's going to be interesting to watch what Donovan Raiola does as far as shifting things around. That could also change, I guess, potential needs depending on where on the offensive line. If, one player moves from this spot to this spot, does Teddy Prohaska move into that spot? And then if he moves there, what does that mean? There's a number of things where you can kind of finagle pieces, but that finagling also then means, what could you be looking at as far as, if there is a transfer, let's say there is a transfer person that they're looking at, that person, it might be dependent on, okay, if we bring that person in, where do they slot in? Where can they slot in? Does that mean this person needs to move here? Is this the right fit? There are a lot of questions, and I do not envy Raiola and Frost and the whole team right now, kind of having to, this was the case even before this news broke with Nouredin, by the way. Like, that was the case to begin with. I think offensive line, well, I know because we hear it, it has been a contentious point for a lot of fans and rightfully so. I wish you all could see Greg's eyes on that one. And rightfully so. It's been a contentious point for any of us who've been covering the team, because it really is the end all be all. If your offensive line, especially with a team that has intention of throwing the ball more than it did with Adrian Martinez scrambling out of many situations, if you have someone like, and I saw this conversation, by the way, on Twitter, I am not in any way implying that someone like Casey Thompson or Chubba Purdy or Logan Smothers cannot scramble out of a situation. It's just not what Nebraska wants them to do. They want them to be able to throw the ball and to rely on the running backs to be the one to run the ball. But you have to have an offensive line that can handle that. And we already knew there was a ton of questions. So this just unfortunately throws another wrench into all of the questions that we had and what those potential needs are. And it really is in my opinion, going to depend on what's even out there right now as far as availability, or do they feel that do they need somebody immediately today? Or is it something that they feel pretty good about what they have? That's why I was looking at like Steve's article. Is it really, in my opinion, like you could bump people around, but then what happens? So I think I'm ending up presenting more questions than I am answers.
I think that accurately represents what's happening with the offensive line. And you're 100% right. That was before this news. There still were all these questions. Now there are just more. And I think that is a good point about how you go about getting someone from the transfer portal, not knowing if the offensive line currently is settled and who's playing where. Like, just an example of this is Turner Corcoran, right? Like, we don't know where he's going to play. He's going to play somewhere, but where he plays really then has kind of a domino effect of where you might end up meeting someone. Like, there are just so many question marks to figure out with the guys that are currently on the team to then even know if you need to go and get someone first and foremost, and if you do, what position is that kid going to play? Like, it's just, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and most of it is probably going to have to be answered in the fall. Like, it's going to be hard to answer that now, kind of in summer when, you know, there's no pads and actual stuff happening. It's a really tough spot, but it was going to be that way regardless of the suspension or not.
Oh yeah, it definitely, you know, I saw a lot of people going, you know, talking about how Nebraska just can't catch a break. You know, we always knew that this offensive line was going to have a number of questions. It definitely does not make things easier by any means. But it, you know, it'll be interesting to see. I think we knew all along because of one, just the change in coaching. And then also because you lost a player like Cam Jurgens, so you do have to make changes. You're going to have to make, you know, you're going to shift things around. It was always going to be an interesting fall as far as how the offensive line, you know, I meant to say fall camp, to see how the offensive line ultimately shapes up through that before they get to that first game against Northwestern. This, you know, doesn't make it easier, but at the same time, I don't think anything was settled. So, you know, if there's one blessing in disguise, if you will, they were still, you know, at least from everything I know, there was still a number of things that had to be addressed where it's like, well, just continue to address new things, I guess. So it'll be interesting. It's kind of one of those things. I see a lot of people say this as well, where they're like, next man up. Well, you know, that's true. We'll see what happens. It is truly that at this moment, next player up. What that means and who steps up, we have yet to see, but hey, it'll be interesting to watch if nothing else.
Absolutely. It had been a fairly like quiet, drama free, especially June. Like, I feel like there had not been a lot of drama here like this last stretch of the offseason since spring football ended. But there's always something, right? Always something.
It keeps recruiting interesting because, like I said, or like everyone has said, there's a lot of eyes now on that and like what will happen or if there's anything. So it'll be interesting. If you know, if you have any questions or thoughts on this, please feel free to continue the conversation in the comments. We always welcome additional conversation. Please keep it respectful, though. Y'all are pretty good. Y'all are pretty good. I'll give you that. But every so often, you get a little snarky with one another. Be nice. Look at me, just like telling our comment section. But no, we do appreciate it. So feel free to keep having the conversation in the comments. You can also tweet at Greg Smith HV on Twitter, or at Hail Varsity if you have questions, if you want to continue the conversation there. You can tweet at me as well at Erin Sorensen, but I will probably direct you to the expert in the room, which is Greg. And I can say for both of us, we appreciate you each week tuning in, watching these videos, offering your thoughts, your comments, your questions. Please keep doing that. And then head to hailvarsity.com tonight at 6 p.m. Central for more on this topic. Greg has the recruiting notebook, which goes live Sunday through Thursday, again, 6 p.m. Central, and it is sponsored by Pinnacle Bank. So we really appreciate them and their support. And we appreciate your support going and reading and checking it out. Like I said, just keep that conversation going. Greg, before I let you go for the day, any final thoughts?
Things are always interesting around here. This is what I will leave us with here.
That is, no truer words have ever been spoken. So thank you as always to everyone for watching. We will be back next week with even more. We'll have tons of video content throughout the week as well. So be sure to go check out, like I said, Greg's interview with Steve Warren that's already live on this channel, and we'll have more to come as the week goes on. Thank you as always. Talk to you later.